Senator Bunting, aren't you concerned with the Prime Minister's statement about meeting thy judge or meeting thy maker? Don't you think that is a very worrying trend in with crime fighting in this country, giving the police more powers than they should have?
Well, it is, and it is seen as a sort of subtle, or maybe not so subtle encouragement to to proceed regardless of what the law says. And we have seen that this Prime Minister has very little regard even for our highest law, the Constitution, as he has been repeatedly found by the courts
17
to
times,
violate
17 times, 17 times.
17 times. So he would prefer to be a dictator, and we always have to be wary of authoritarians. They will seize upon people's fears, say about a high murder rate or high crime rate, and they will then use that to take away people's rights, as if you can't have a strong position against crime while also standing strongly for people's rights. And we don't accept that.
But Senator Bunting, there is a trend with the targeted operations in Jamaica. 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock, people being carried out of their houses and being murdered. These targeted operations, Senator Bunting, many people would argue that they breach human rights because many of these police don't even have a badge. They are in mask up. These things, Senator Bunting, these are serious breaches of human rights. Can you give a commitment that when you are the next Minister of National Security, you are going to see to it that there are standard procedures that are upheld in the JCF? Can you talk to that tonight? 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, babies in hands of men and police killing men and babies dropping on ground, Senator Bunting. We are hearing the cases, 160 deaths, Senator Bunting. 95% of those cases are targeted operations, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the mornings. People being killed in their sleep, Senator Bunting. This cannot continue and be business as usual.
Well, certainly I cannot comment on any of those particular cases as I wasn't there, but I have heard the cries of many persons who, in speaking to particular operations, are convinced. And when they describe the scenario, it does sound very suspicious. However, what I can say is that under our administration, we are very strong on the Charter of Rights. We believe that everyone, even suspects, because as you know, many people who are pointed out and considered to be suspects, when the matter actually comes to a trial, they're acquitted because oftentimes the intelligence doesn't stand up. The intelligence doesn't lead to evidence that can be scrutinized, stand up in court. This is why everybody is entitled to due process. And we strongly believe in that. That's why we've taken the government to court and successfully challenged the serial and routine use of states of emergency as a tool of policing.
Yes.
And we've been successful at that. And ironically, since between our blocking the extensions in the Senate and the various victory of ourselves and others in constitutional court, it is since they've stopped the use of SOEs that we have now started to see the declines in murders, shootings, and violent crime. And we believe that's because the police have been now, in a sense, compelled to do the professional policing that they were trained to do. And they have ended this militarization of the police, where the Prime Minister liked to cosplay on the behind the podium, flanked by his generals in the JCF, generals in the army, and looking like a wannabe tyrant.
Oh Lord!
It was just really a waste of time and performative. A lot of police and military were at these checkpoints at the borders of the parishes that were in under states of emergency, really wasting time and wasting resources. That as these 24-hour checkpoints really didn't catch anyone. It was just displays of force in a sense, to try and suggest that they were doing something. Since that wasteful use of resources have stopped, is when we're seeing the police return to the traditional professional form of policing,
Yes.
using spearfishing methods, using technology, and so on, increasing the boots on the ground of the JCF
But
versus the JDF, which was the first force that was beefed up in terms of recruiting. And I've always said soldiers cannot replace police officers. They have a different mission, they're trained differently, and we're now starting to see some success from what we've been advocating for the last 10 years. But I just want to say one more thing.
yes.
Under Andrew Hornis,
Mm-hmm.
more Jamaicans have been murdered in his 2 terms than under any other 2 terms under any other prime minister. So when they want to point to the last 6 months or so of reductions as a
Yes.
success for their 10 years,
Uh,
9 of the 10 years were higher
almost
than
13,000 Jamaicans killed.
almost 13,000 Jamaicans. No other 2 terms have seen these numbers. And it didn't have to be, but they followed this pig-headed approach, this doctrinal approach to these states of emergency, which, as I said, the court has found that not only were they unconstitutional, but they were ineffective.
Very
They may have reduced crime in a particular era, but what you saw was the balloon effect. They just displaced those criminals to another part of Jamaica where they continue their criminal activities. So overall, you not only didn't have a reduction, you actually had a 25% increase on average in the first 8 years of this term.
But Senator Bunting, the police are being overworked and underpaid. What is happening with the overtime for the law enforcers? What is the real situation? Why the law enforcers are not being paid their overtime monies?
That is quite baffling. As you know, the court had given the GSF a particular amount of time by which they should have a system in place to record, do the administration for, and to pay overtime. In fact, the former chairman of the Police Federation got into trouble with the then commissioner because he was basically demanding what the court had ordered the GSF to do, and they were very late in doing it. Subsequently, they have put in a system, but it's far from reliable in the sense that, and I said this at the Police Federation conference, I get so many complaints.
Yes.
First of all, it's almost like lottery at the end of the month in terms of determining the amount that they're going to receive from they never know if their number going to play and they're going to get the right overtime pay in a particular month.
Yes.
Oftentimes the overtime for this month is delayed 2 or 3 months before they actually get paid for it. And then the second thing is, even though every police officer has a JCF email address, their pay slips are still produced physically, and it sometimes takes 10 days after the money hits their account to understand what that money is for.
Mighty God.
And then this day,
with the use of technology.
With the use of technology, I am completely perplexed as to why the JSF would still have printed pay slips. That takes, sometimes 2 weeks to be disseminated to all the different units and divisions and police stations across the country. When everyone has a JCF email address, every sworn officer has a JCF email address.
That inefficiency is something that you will have to sort and fix.
Definitely. And I'm hoping I see the JSF has an expo coming up in a couple of weeks. And I know that this commissioner is a technology oriented person. His background is in IT. So, I'm hoping that by the time the expo comes around, they will be able to say that this issue is resolved, because it's really not a very high tech. I mean, nowadays everybody, gets paid by bank transfer. They get their notices
Yes.
electronically. So we really hope that the police officers can benefit from what is a fairly well-developed standard technology.
So, what is your commitment to the law enforcers tonight with regards to overtime? Should you become, or when you become the next Minister of National Security, will
Well,
you?
they will
Is
be paid correctly and they will be paid promptly. And that would be a priority of our administration.
they'll be paid correctly and they'll be paid
Yes,
promptly?
that's correct.
As you talk about being paid promptly and correctly, there is millions now being spent on artificial intelligence with Constable Smart being introduced in our police force. Do you think the priorities should be AI in the police force, or should it be a priority of modernizing the force to see to it that all forces have vehicles and all forces have all the things to maintain them? Or would you be looking at the AI Constable Smart to see whether it will give value for money to Jamaica this time?
Well, I didn't see that demonstration where they were, or that media event where they were talking about Constable Smart. I saw some references in the media tweet, but I didn't actually see the presentation. But what I can tell you is that you really need a combination of technology and traditional policing. What technology really does is enhance the capacity, enhance the output of the human who is using the technology. Just like when all of us use Chat GPT, the
Yes.
output is only as good as the prompts that you give Chat GPT. So if you don't prompt it in a very specific, very reliable way, you'll just get garbage in and garbage out. So it's the same thing with policing technology. In many ways, for example, if you have 250 camera feeds coming into a control room,
Yes.
it will be very hard for any set of police officers 24/7 to be monitoring those 256 feeds, on a whole heap of screens. What you can do is have artificial intelligence monitor all those feeds for license plate recognition,
Yes.
for vehicles, stolen vehicles, or vehicles with wanted men that you're looking for. You can have facial recognition. And then when the artificial intelligence flags a particular
Yes.
feed, then an alert pops up and a
Your
police
human
officer,
resource.
right, takes it over from that. Look, is it a false alarm? Is it the person they're looking for? Where is that? Can they triangulate on that now using other technologies, cell phone metadata, etc. So there's technology gives you a lot of powerful tools. Cyber investigation, in nowadays everybody has a smartphone, everybody has social media presence, and no matter how aware a criminal is that these are tools that can help to locate him, help to even provide evidence,
Yes.
they slip up at some point. They
So,
slip up at some point. And
so
you,
you're saying, therefore, even if you were to advance the use of AI, you would therefore look at how it is used presently to enhance the security apparatus for the security
correct,
ministry.
correct.
Not necessarily the plan that they have presently of instituting Constable Smart across police stations.
As I said, you want to have your police officers wherever they are, even if they're in Alligator Pond or Asia, in southern Manchester.
Lord, you have to bring in the Southern Manchester tonight.
They should have in their hands, in a smartphone or some similar device that they travel with, the ability to access the database of the tax administration department to check license plates. They see a suspicious vehicle on the road, they can go run the plates, they can interrogate the driver's license database to see if the one they're looking at is a fake or if it's accurate and so on. So yes, we must put the power of technology and artificial intelligence, etc., in the hands of our police officers. But at the end of the day, it will never replace them.
Will never replace them. And that is what Peter Bunting committed to. Not using AI to replace the human resource in the JC.
But to enhance them.
Speaking of technology, Senator Bunting, weren't you the one who created the Stay Alert app?
Absolutely.
Wasn't that the Alert app used to protect women and vulnerable projects?
Right. What we really wanted to do was not just to rely entirely on the police, but we wanted to empower people with a tool that they could help with their own safety and security.
Yes.
And in fact, I'm really recently, as we've been hearing about these persons who have been kidnapped or taken away in a taxi by some rogue taxi driver or something, I really am a bit saddened because the Stay Alert app was ahead of its time.
Yes.
It would be even more useful today because smartphones have become ubiquitous now. Basically everybody has one. And what that did, that app allowed you to, for example, press a panic button. So you could be in a taxi. Everybody else has come out. This young teenage schoolgirl could be the only one left, and she noticed the taxi now varies from its route.
Yes.
She wouldn't have to wait until something happens. She could press the panic button on the Stay Alert app. The police would get that, and they would be tracking. They would be tracking her phone. So whichever, no matter where that vehicle diverted from the route or so on, the police would have that and be able to respond quickly. And Jamaica, especially rural Jamaica, we don't have many street addresses, street names, and street numbers. You have to pass Miss Matty shop, take the next left, buy the big mango tree, and so on. But using GPS, the global positioning system, which is in your phone, once you press that panic button, it would send your exact precise location to police control.
So the Stay Alert app, do you believe the government had abandoned it because Peter Bunting and the People's National Party government was the one who created it?
That's not the official reason they give.
What is the response?
The reason they say is that the technology eventually would have gotten old. But of course, over 10 years, you have to update, you have to reinvest, you have to do new releases, use new types of software, new programming languages, etc. So that
was upgrades.
Just keep upgrading any software that you buy today. I mean, if you have Apple or Microsoft operating systems on your computers, every couple of months you get an alert to say you need to download the latest version or release of that software. So that could have been done. But as I said, I'm really saddened with what is happening now, especially the amount of ladies and children who you hear being abducted, who sometimes raped and murdered. This would have been a powerful tool in their hands, and really using the technology and empowering people, and even empowering third persons who see something suspicious. They may not be certain. You have used that app and you could have taken a picture or video of something that looks suspicious to you, and again uploaded it. It would have gone straight to police control. You could have decided whether you wanted it to be anonymous or not, but it would have similarly sent the location of the clip, the video clip or the picture, to police control so they could find it via GPS.
Senator Bunting, I want to ask you another question. When last has the National Security Council of Jamaica met?
Well, I can't say because they've stopped inviting the opposition spokesman.
Repeat that?
I said they've stopped inviting the opposition spokesman to that meeting. I've been spokesman when Bruce Golding was Prime Minister.
Mm-hmm.
And he very diligently and consistently invited the
Opposition spokesperson.
spokesman to the meetings. And, obviously, we appreciated the brief and so on. I will tell you, when the Dudus matter came up, then it stopped.
Mm.
Then we were shut out. In fact, I strongly suspect that no meetings were being held then, because it would have been too embarrassing for the government. But it restarted, I think, when Andrew Holness became Prime Minister. I think it may have happened for a couple occasions, but it has not been the practice.
But with this large gun find a few weeks ago,
You mean the one in Tivoli, the one proximate to Tivoli Gardens?
yes, at that warehouse.
At the warehouse where many such gun finds have been found. The one
Yes,
owned by a former JLP.
yes, that one.
Okay. I
Senator
know.
Bunting, why is the government so tight-lipped about that gun find?
Well, that's interesting. Well, first of all, my information is that it was our international partners who provided the intelligence, and in a sense would have ensured that intelligence was acted upon.
So it was basically from so it wasn't like domestically. We got so it was somebody, one of our international partners.
My understanding, it was a coordinated operation, traced from source to where it was eventually intercepted.
But the response of the government, there has been no press conference. We have heard nothing about the persons who have been intercepted. We have heard nothing. Is this the kind of leadership that we should be expecting from Peter Bunting and Mark Golding when it comes on to crime fighting and keeping the nation aware of what is happening?
Not at all. I mean, there must be, there have been some very suspicious, what should I say, similar finds. You remember the cocaine at Boscobel Airport?
Yes.
You remember the plane that crashed somewhere off Rocky Point?
Yes.
And you heard of the initial incident and then nothing after that, just
True.
like complete radio silence.
Mm-hmm.
And no explanation. Who were the persons on that plane? What was the contraband on the plane? I think there have been a couple of those emergency plane landings or crash landings that have you heard nothing further. If the physical plane wasn't there to know that something had happened, the public would be none the wiser. But this is the pattern of this government. It's a government of cover-ups.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know whether they're just embarrassed or they're complicit or they're hiding the identities of cronies or members of the party. I mean, up to now, we can't hear who the owner of medical technologies, person A. We still have not heard that, even though it's in violation of the Companies Act Amendment of 2023.
Yes.
Which was important. In fact, Kamina Johnson-Smith said it when she introduced the bill in the Senate.
Yes.
That if we didn't get off the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force gray list, or worse, the blacklist, it would be catastrophic for the country, and that was how she had introduced it. 2 years later,
yes,
Donovan Williams, government member of parliament and attorney,
yes,
trying to distance himself from the ownership, revealed that he was holding these shares in trust, 80%, I believe, of the total holdings in trust. Absolute violation of the Companies Act, which was amended in 2023 to force compulsory disclosure of ultimate beneficial owners. And I don't think to this day, even now that it has been exposed, we still don't know who person is.
Jamaica still doesn't know.
Still doesn't know. This is a company, by the way, that I don't know if you saw, I think it was 18 Degrees North, had a recent follow-up article on it. And
Yes.
essentially was saying that, first of all, this company has got hundreds of millions of dollars in business from the Ministry of Health, and in particular the Southeast Regional Health Authority.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the contracts it has received, it was the sole bidder. It was under this limited tender, which is one of the areas that can be easily abused.
Wow.
You put out, you invite 3 people to bid, but 2 of the 3 know that is a set hand.
It's a coax.
It's just going so you can tick some boxes, so they don't bother waste their time because they already know who is going to get it.
Mighty God.
So and there's an interesting, when you look at the amount of business they get when the GLP is in office, is many times what happens when the PNP is in office. So
and this company was formed in 2007 when Bruce Golding was Prime Minister.
It was formed the same year they came into office and got a lot of business, then dropped off in the 2012 to 2016, and then 2016 to 2020 picked up again. Unfortunately, they stopped publishing in 2020 to 2025. But I can guarantee you, when we get that information, we will see that they've continued to do very well under the GLP administration.
Mighty God.
Stay tuned for more PDTV News Evening Highlights. Remember to show your support. Comment, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.